Nam-Myoho-Renge-Kyo. We're reading the basics of Buddhism by Pat Allwright, and today we're on the chapter called The Middle Way. And here's a quote here. It says, "Life is indeed an elusive reality that transcends both the words and concepts of existence and non-existence. It is neither existence nor non-existence, yet exhibits the qualities of both. It is the mystery entity of the middle way. That is the reality of all things." That was a bit of a tongue twister. Anyway, the sole purpose of Buddhist philosophy is for people to overcome suffering and establish true happiness. The early Buddhist sutras taught that suffering was the result of trying to cling on to people and things, which by their very nature are temporary. We die, loved ones die, fortunes change. Life is a continual state of flux. In the early days of Buddhism, therefore, people devoted themselves to eliminating their attachments to temporary things through various meditations and practices. However, trying to detach oneself is, in the end, not an answer. Getting rid of all attachment includes ridding oneself of the desire to eat, sleep, have sex, and so on. This extreme approach ultimately leads to a denial of life itself. This cannot be said to be the secret to a happy life. In order to clarify the true nature of life, Mahayana Buddhists formulated the concept of the middle way. Although a familiar sounding phrase, it means in Buddhism have nothing to do with compromise. While it may seem at first glance to be advocating modernization in all things, moderation in all things, it goes well beyond that idea. It does not mean to steer a middle course between extremes, rather, it means to unify and transcend duality. The middle way derives from a principle central to Buddhist philosophy known as the unification of the three truths. These are the truths of non-sustainability, ku, the truth of temporary existence, ki, and the truth of the middle way, chu. Although all life can be viewed from these three aspects, they cannot be separated, so they are sometimes called the threefold truth. The truth of non-sustainability means that nothing in life is unchanging or fixed. The nature of all things is ku, or potentially, which cannot be defined as either existence or non-existence. The concept of ku is often understood to mean nothingness, void or emptiness, but this is not at all its true meaning. On the contrary, ku indicates the infinite potential of life as each and every moment. The truth of temporary existence, ki, means that whilst all things are non-substantial, they do have a temporary existence. The truth of the middle way, chu, is that everything is both non-sustainability and temporary existence, yet its essence is neither of these. Chu is the true entity of life, defined by Nichiren Buddhism as Nam-Myoho-Renge-Kyo. All of this is rather hard to grasp. Indeed, the true entity, chu, is beyond the limitation of words or concepts, but if we consider some examples, we can get an idea of what it means. If we look at a chestnut tree, we see that it changes from season to season, dropping its leaves in the winter, flowering in the spring, and producing nuts in the autumn. The way the tree changes each season, the lifespan of the tree, and its health all correspond to the truth of non-sustainability, ku. Its outward appearance at each stage of its cycle corresponds with the truth of temporary existence, ki. The tree itself is chu. It is at the same time unified with nature and unique in itself, possessing the capability to produce nuts instead of, say, apples. All things can be seen in terms of these three truths, including inanimate objects. If we take the example of a mirror, it has the potential to be clean, dirty, chipped, and so on, which corresponds to the truth of non-sustainability. Any image it reflects are its physical aspects, or the truth of temporary existence. The mirror itself is the entity or the middle way. In terms of human beings, we can see the truth of temporary existence key in the way a person looks and speaks, which corresponds to the physical self. The truth of non sustainability, ku, refers to the mind or spirit, which has unlimited potential. The truth of the middle way, chu, or the entity of a person's life, is the inherent capacity to be unique as well as one with the universe. This entity is often called the true self, the greater self, or the universal self. Between birth and old age, a person changes many times, both physically and mentally. Nevertheless, there is always something about an individual which is intrinsically the same. This is the entity of life. It is what makes each person unique, what makes us human, and what concept connects us to the universe. If we have difficulty grasping this concept, it is because we are trying to separate the three truths. This is not the intention of the analysis, it is quite the reverse. The Japanese term for the three truths is santai, which means three, sam, and to be obvious or clear, tai. Obviously, or clearly, we can look at life from any of these three viewpoints, but since each one contains the other three and they are unified, we cannot separate them. There are many ways in which dualistic thinking has underlain the development of our civilization. The separation of mind and body, the separation of man and nature, the separation of good and evil. This has led to many problems in society. The oneness of mind and body and of self and environment are discussed elsewhere in the book, so let us consider good and evil. Traditional folklore is about goodies and baddies. There are, for example, very few European folk stories where the baddies turn into goodies. Buddhist literature, however, is full of fables in which demons turn into gods. This is because Buddhism views people as neither good nor bad intrinsically. Rather, at every moment we have the potential to exhibit either enlightened or delusion. From the viewpoint of the unification of the three truths, when we are deluded, the physical aspect of our life key manifests itself as greed. Greed is the insatiable desire to fulfill our own physical needs, regardless of the needs of others. Our mental aspect, ku, manifests itself as anger, the desire to dominate others and to be right at all times. The entity of our lives, chu, which deludes is, as it were, shrouded in fundamental darkness, blind to the true nature of life. This is usually called ignorance or stupidity. It is the fundamental illusion from which both greed and anger rise. When enlightened, the physical aspect of our lives is transformed into compassion, empathy for others, and a desire to help them overcome their suffering. The mental aspect is transformed into wisdom. The capacity to see the best course of action is order to improve the quality of life from everyone and everything. The essential aspect of life, or the middle way, becomes the source of life force itself, which is unified with the life force of the cosmos. From this fundamental enlightened life, or the greater self, compassion and wisdom are able to flow freely. However, we need a way to access this greater self or universal energy. Nichiren Buddhism taught us how to do this so. A mind which presently is clouded by illusions originating from the innate darkness of life is like a tarnished mirror, but once it is polished it will become clear, reflecting the enlightenment of immutable truth. Arouse deep faith and polish your mirror night and day. How should you polish it? By chanting Nam-Myoho-Renge-Kyo. Chanting Nam-Myoho-Renge-Kyo enables us to return our lives to the source of fundamental life force, or the greater self, and live with the wisdom and compassion without denying any aspect of our lives. We can then fully appreciate everything life has to offer. This is the middle way which unifies and overcomes the contradictions of a lesser self, based solely on the limited and changeable physical and mental aspects of life. We can see the importance of the approach of the middle way in society. The mental aspect of ku, which where ideas are formed, is the driving force behind the progress of civilization. The physical aspect of life key works to create harmony in ourselves, with others, and with nature. The middle way, Chu, is the unchanging foundation of life itself, which supports and stabilizes the other two. All three aspects are needed for a healthy society. Progress without harmony leads to idealism. Ideas only become practical and worthwhile when placed in the context of the needs of others and the laws of nature. On the other hand, if every great idea was scrapped because it was considered to be too difficult, then progress would be sacrificed for the sake of harmony, and this would lead to stagnation. Harmony without a firm foundation leads to empathy or compromise. Progress without a creative basis becomes destructive. All three aspects, harmony, progress, and life force, are needed for the betterment of society. This is what is meant by the middle way. To live for the greater self does not mean abandoning the lesser self. The lesser self is only able to act because of the existence of the greater self. Desires and attachments experienced by all of us are smaller selves have stimulated the advance of the civilization. If man had not been attracted to wealth, economic growth could not have taken place. If man had not struggled to overcome the natural elements and provide relief from such things as cold, the natural sciences would not have flourished. Without the mutual attachment and conflicts of the sexes, literature would have been deprived of one of its most famous and enduring fields of expression. Desire and all it implies constitutes a generative moving force in life. But they and the smaller self they affect most directly must be correctly orientated. Buddhist teachings strive to discover the greater self and instead of suppressing or eliminating the smaller self, to control and direct it so that it can contribute to the growth of a better world civilization through its relation with the greater self. And so we've come to the end of that chapter about the middle way. And so tomorrow will be the true entity of all phenomena. So until tomorrow, Nam-Myoho-Renge-Kyo.